suggest air contaminated by smoke, traffic fumes, and dust may make you more likely to develop autoimmune conditions and rheumatoid arthritis. Dr. Reena Mehta with Uptown Allergy and Asthma joins us now to tell us more in depth about this new study or these new studies. So, Dr. Mehta, how do they make the connection between those air pollutants and these health conditions?
So that's a great question. So this was a study recently published in Rheumatic and Musculoskeletal Diseases. This was a study done out of Italy where they looked at about 80,000 participants, so a pretty big study. And they basically looked at where they lived in their area code or their zip code and tried to connect them to their local mining industry where they could actually measure air pollution levels. And what they found was that about 12% of these people, of this 80,000, actually had an increased risk of autoimmune diseases, theoretically linked to having increased exposure to pollution.
So, Dr. Mehta, I know people at home could hear this and they may be visiting from another part of the country that has worse pollution than we may have, or we may have worse pollution on some days in other parts of the country. You can kind of help where you live, but sometimes you really can't. So, after the studies come out, what can people do to protect themselves, to lower their risks of coming down with these health issues that are connected to their outside environment?
So, some level of pollution and smoke and dust exposure is normal. We all are exposed to some level. The point of this study was looking at if you go above that threshold, then what percentage makes you more inflamed to cause systemic inflammation and then trigger the immune system in a negative way. And so, the concern is obviously if you're chronically exposed to high air pollution levels and certain parts of the world are such as that, then yes, you are at potentially increased risk. Now, this was an observational study, so of course there are some limitations. It was an older population of patients, mostly female, and so those might be people at risk for autoimmune disease anyway, but it certainly does link the fact that having too much exposure to pollution, smoke, and dust over a period of time is not good for anyone's health.
Well, Dr. Mehta, we're still in this pandemic, but not, I guess, as deep as we were a few months ago, but masks are still out there. And then, every day, especially in the summertime, we seem to get more of that, those air pollution days, higher air pollution days. So, would it hurt on those days, especially for any and everyone, just to pop a mask on if they're going to be spending an extended amount of period out time, if they can safely do it? Because I know a lot of times on top of the air pollution problem, it's really hot on those days. But is that something people should think about or consider if they're already high risk?
Absolutely. And so you made a great point, is what can we do to protect ourselves on those particular days, especially if that is your industry or your line of work where you are exposed to construction or high dust or pollution. Absolutely, wearing an N95 mask will help filter out those particulate particles so that you're not breathing it in and then theoretically having systemic inflammation. And so specifically, the risk in this study showed a link to rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease such as Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, as well as mixed connective tissue disease. And so basically, anytime the immune system gets triggered in a way that's too much, it can go the other way and become auto-inflammatory, or it's almost like your body fighting itself. And so things that you can do to protect yourself is certainly wearing a mask or being aware on those high pollution days, maybe not being exposed or not going out during that time, and just trying to protect yourself so that it's not over time a chronic exposure to these pollutants.
Well, Dr. Mehta, we appreciate you breaking down that study to us. And again, you said it's kind of the beginning of those findings, so we'll hear a lot more on this matter moving forward. Again, we thank you for your time.